Okay, great. Thank you so much, Doreen, and thank you, everyone, and thanks for going around the room. It really helps when we're talking about this to know who's in the room and the level of expertise that you probably already have on a lot of this subject matter. So today I'm going to demonstrate a tool that CAEL offers called the PLA Accelerator. It's a web-based tool, and I'm just going to start out with a few PowerPoint slides that just kind of introduce the thinking behind the tool, and you know, with the genesis of it, and then I'll hop right into what the student experience is in the tool, and then I'll switch quickly to the advisor experience of the tool. But as I go along, feel free to ask questions. Since I have the screen share on and everything minimized, I won't be able to see you if you put anything in the chat. So please just call out and ask your questions so that I can go ahead and stop, because I have no problem doing that. So when we created the PLA Accelerator tool, probably now it's been about 4 years since we've had the tool in place. It came from the work that CAEL did with institutions when we would work with them to develop their PLA policies or improve their PLA policies, and then we wouldn't see a lot of adoption of the prior learning assessment options at the institutions. So we started to talk to advisors and enrollment coordinators, and we came across these 4 situations where we think stopped students from getting access to PLA. First, advisors or enrollment coordinators would have that intake conversation where they inventory all of the expertise of the student and look for some PLA opportunities, but then that information isn't shared isn't saved into an SIS or a CRM. So it's really lost. It's on the back of a napkin, and if we ever try to address it again, that kind of information is gone. We also found that advisors might have limited time with students, and some would mention PLA and some wouldn't. And so it was really just if you got lucky enough to have an advisor who wanted to talk about PLA, then there would be an opportunity for an adult student to do some PLA. We also found that sometimes advisors would be confused about the different options for PLA. Oftentimes, you know, if you're going to do a portfolio, you have to contact this faculty member in this department. If you're going to do a challenge exam, you do this. A CLEP test, you go here. So with all of those different options, it was really hard for an advisor to keep that fresh in their mind. And so sometimes they would just skip it because they just didn't want to go through that. Like, I'm going to send you there, I hope it works out. And lastly, we found that sometimes advisors just didn't talk about PLA because they made a decision that I don't think the student would be a great candidate for PLA. I don't think they want to write a paper instead of taking a class, so I'm just not going to mention it. So when we created the PLA Accelerator tool, we took all of the questions that we would like advisors to have time to ask, and we compiled them in one place and organized them. And that way, if a student completes the PLA Accelerator, or at least has access to it, they're getting a chance to answer all of the questions that all of the advisors, if they had all the time in the world and all of the expertise needed to really pull out those experiential learning moments from students. So we really wanted to make it a level playing field, and we don't want it to determined that you get PLA access just because their advisor happened to tell them, or you happen to find it on a web page. So once we formalize that intake process, we can also then do some reporting on the back end that colleges don't probably have access to, which is how many students were recommended for PLA, how many students weren't. So you can start to really get a picture of what's going on with PLA at your institution. So that's really the whole PowerPoint deck, and then I'll switch right over to the tool. Does anyone have any questions before I get started on the actual demonstration? No? Okay. Well, like I said, just feel free to call out if you do have any questions. So this is our PLA Accelerator tool. I create a new version of it for every college who uses it. So what can I do to make this tool be more configurable to your institution? So the first thing we can do is we'll change the URL up here at the top to be HACC. So that's a little bit easier for you to find if you were trying to figure out what the URL is. It's not something really confusing. I could also change this color here to make it match your web page. And I'm going to go ahead and shrink this screen. It's a mobile responsive website. So if I was looking at it on my iPhone, things kind of move around. So a student always has a good experience in the tool. And because it's mobile responsive, we end up putting the college's logo at the bottom. And people always ask, why is the logo at the bottom? Because everyone's got a logo that's a different shape and size. And when we used to put the logos on the top, then it would break the mobile responsiveness of the site. So if you're wondering where your logo would go, that's where it would go. What else could I do to configure this login page? So right now, we don't have the ability to integrate this with something for a same sign-on or a single sign-on. So when a student comes here, they're going to be creating their own account. And what we can do is we can require them to include a student ID should you ever want to lock this down and say, this tool is only for admitted students who would have a student ID. We could also lock it down and say, oh, sorry, those are all my test emails I've used before. We can lock it down so students can only use their hacc.edu email. So, or whatever it is, it might be student.hcc.edu. So we can lock it down so that only admitted students with a student school email address could use the tool. I could also change the terms and conditions if you have something that all of your information technology needs to have this warning, these terms, these policies listed. We can put those on there, and I can create other links across the bottom here that would go back to your web page, give students a little bit more information about the tool. So that's the way we try to put as much as we can onto the tool so that it makes sense to your students and your user base. So I'm going to go ahead and create an account here. I just need to grab a sip of water. So you're going to see a lot of things pop up here because I've done a lot of tests. I do a lot of demos. So I'm just going to put some numbers in there and create my test account. And then I'm going to go ahead and sign in. So the first thing that students see is the option to select an advisor. So that's where this becomes something to think about if you're going to have prospective students come in and they don't necessarily have an advisor yet. We can always have an option here that says, I don't know who my advisor is, or I don't have an advisor yet. So it could still be routed to someone. So I'm going to go ahead and pick myself as my advisor. And I'm going to make the screen maybe a little bit smaller. I want to make sure people can still see things. Can you still see the screen? I mean, is it readable?
Yes, it's nice, yes. It's not cut off at all.
Okay, thanks. Perfect. So if I go through the tool as a student, I would be presented with each page of the tool linearly. And I just keep hitting continue and I keep getting to the next section. But I wanted to jump up to the left-hand corner where there's the opportunity for a student to jump around if they want. And I wanted to show you all of the different screens that are available in the tool. As we're going through, we're also going to go through all of the screens linearly. And you see something that isn't appropriate for your students, something you wouldn't want to use right now, we can always turn it off. So after a college signs up for the PLA Accelerator, I sit with usually one or two people who are my contacts there, and we go through page by page and configure the tool. We turn pages on, we turn pages off, we change the prompt, change some of the multiple choice options to try to, again, like make it appropriate for your student base. So as we're going through it, if you see a page where you're like, that would not work for us, just know that we have the ability to turn them off if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead to the first page, which is the About You page. And on this screen, we can have as many binary options as you want. So check all that apply. If these 4 don't work for you, I can replace them with something else. I could have 10 of them, whatever you'd like. So this is your opportunity to kind of collect some basic info, which might be really helpful if this is going to be for prospective students as well as existing students, so you can start to find out more information about them. So I'm just going to check a couple of these. And then I'm going to mark this page complete. After every page, we have a little, thank you for doing this, because we don't want to make people feel like they're taking a test. That's why you'll see it kind of has this playful look and feel to it. But we also don't want to promise credits to students. So that's why we provide uplifting messages, but we're not promising that they can earn credit for what they know. It's just saying, if you complete this, that's your best chance to find out if you can earn credit for what you know. So now we have the languages page. It's pretty self-explanatory. What could I change on this page if you and I were configuring it? We could ask this question differently. We can ask this question differently. So just think about, if you'd like to wordsmith some of it, I'm happy to walk through every page because there's only 12 pages. And I'm going to go ahead and mark this page complete. So the next page is our informal learning page. And this one isn't trying to glean that experiential learning. That is on a page that's coming up in a few more screens. Here we're looking for learning that a student had that wasn't college credit. I mean, it could have been a CEU, it could have been some other sort of licensure, but we're just trying to jog their memory about something that they might have studied. So what do people change on this screen? They might change the prompt. They might change the credentials. You might want to take off certificate of completion or add a different credential. If there's something that you see in your area a lot, we can add that. And we can also change the type of trainings. If you didn't want self-study on there, some people used to put MOOCs on there when MOOCs were a little bit more popular. So I'm just going to put something in here so when we're on the back end, we have something to look at. So I can add all this information, corporate training, and then I could go ahead and keep adding as many as I want. I'm going to mark that section complete. And then I'm onto the work page. So in the work page, a student can upload their resume, a couple different formats. They could also link to their LinkedIn profile if everything is there. So what happens to the resume once it's uploaded? So it then is tied to the student's profile. So as an advisor, I could go in and look through their resume. And I might be able to pull something out and say, oh, hey, it looks like you took this training, or it looks like you have some expertise. Let's talk about it. So it's really just there for the advisor to take action. So I'm not going to upload something right now. I'm just going to keep going. And then finally, the life experiences page. This is the one where we're trying to ask about we're trying to get some experiential learning details from them. And so this is usually one that a college and I will spend some time really wordsmithing the prompt. We don't want to say, are you able to balance a checkbook? But we do want to say you're able to, at a high level, lead people through volunteerism. Something that a student wouldn't necessarily think was worth college credit, but could be. But again, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver on credit that you could earn. So I'm just going to put in here. Okay. So up until that point in the tool, all of those pages have required that an advisor or a PLA coordinator take some sort of action. So the student says, here are my language details, here's my informal learning, here's my work, and here's my life experience. You have to take some action, tell me what to do, because all I did now was tell you some details about my life. Now the next 3 screens we're going to see are a little bit more instant gratification for the student. We call these next 3 screens the crosswalks. And in this case, these screens will be pre-populated with any certifications on this page, any certifications that you have aligned to some of your college courses. So if you've decided that the Microsoft Word certificate is worth an IT 100 credit, I will work with whomever my contact is there to build this database. Usually I get some Excel spreadsheets and I turn them into a relational database that can be searched. So starting now, once a student puts some information in here, they actually can get instant results. Like oh, I have the certificate, I can immediately see how many credits it's worth. So I'm just going to start with a basic one, like basic data entry, I should say. I'm going to put in, I had a welding certificate, pops right up. I can add it to my record. I can tell you when I completed this. And then I could also upload any of the credentials that might come along with it. And then I can save it to my record. So when an advisor looks at my profile, they're going to see that I have the certificate. If there's an attachment, it would be sitting right there. And the advisor also sees what the equivalency is. And part of the benefit of this is we don't expect advisors or really anyone at the college to remember every certificate that's already been aligned and crosswalked to a course. So in that case, you know, it's sitting somewhere, it's on some Excel spreadsheet somewhere. So if we can put it all in one place, an advisor doesn't have to remember it. And so that's why we really like it when colleges start to use this, because it really takes the load off the advisor just happening and remembering, oh, I think someone did this CompTIA certificate last year and we aligned it to something. So we can also get a little bit more complicated with the crosswalking. Oftentimes, it's faculty committees who sit and make these determinations. And so it might not be as simple as Microsoft Word certificate equals IT 100. It might be that Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel equal IT 100. So it might be a many-to-one relationship. So we can have that, some of that logic in there as well. So now I'm going to move on to the standardized exam crosswalk. So this is where we put in all of the standardized exams, everything from AP, IB to CLEP, UXL, Dante's DSST. So I'll just pull up, I have a couple sample ones in here. I have this UXL one, and in this case, we can add a note. So there might be a faculty committee who said, okay, this requires prior approval with someone, from someone. This exam must be taken after, it must be the one after 2009, because there are some, you know, standardized exams that will have different versions of them. So we can include a note. That way we're really honoring and respecting everything that the faculty committee decided, and we're not losing it. We're not stuffing it in a database and then kind of losing those important details. So I'm just going to show you one other way that we can demonstrate things. So you might have some grades in your CLEP exam where the faculty have decided that if you get a 50, you can get one course, but if you get a 60 or higher, you can get 2 courses. So again, we tried to make this as flexible as possible, and that's when I would work with a college and they start to provide me with this information in spreadsheets, and we sometimes have a couple of meetings to review it so I can make sure I understand it so that I'm demonstrating it the right way to the students. So what happens if a student type something in and it doesn't come up? If you have taken an exam, please add it to your record. So we can also add language in here that says, don't worry about it. Some exams have not been evaluated. If you'd like us to evaluate it, add your information. So I can go ahead and add this standardized exam to my profile. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And when an advisor sees it, they'll know that it was added by the student because there's no equivalency. Everything else has an equivalency. And so then your advisor or PLA coordinator has to take some action and decide, can I send this to someone to have them review it? And, hopefully, if it's positively reviewed, we can go ahead and add that to the database. And so the next person who shows up with that exam or certificate would get credit. And that way we're really having the same experience for all the students coming through. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Or if you think of a question and you want to put it in the chat, we could do that too.
Sure.
Everyone
so the last
good?
crosswalk.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. No worries. So the last crosswalk is the military experience crosswalk. And it's a little bit different than the other two in that it will allow a student to just upload their joint services transcript at the very top. So they could just have the credentials sitting at the top of the crosswalk. And those other ones, and those other previous two, you wanted to add a credential to a specific certificate or exam. So here, you want to just put your joint services transcript, you can put that in. And then here we can, I'm just going to type one in. I have a sample one that's for aviation. So again, this is all me working with a college to populate this information. You know, nothing is going to show up in this database that you haven't approved. This isn't spidering the ACE guide looking for any equivalencies. So in this case, we have the luxury of being able to be very specific. You know, when you start with the ACE guide, you'll see it's 3 lower levels credit IT. But if you have taken the time to really map that, it could be as specific as courses. It can have notes. We could also have many to many. So say I show up with an A+ certificate. It could be that's the equivalent to 6 courses. It could be that if you have these 3 certificates, it equals 1 course. We can have the option that this particular certificate equals this course or this one. So students know I can pick this one or this one, and an advisor knows as well, like this one won't fit in your degree plan, but this one will. So just don't feel like it's got to be as limiting as this certificate equals this course and walk away. We tried to be pretty free with what we added so that we can turn like what's been sitting in a Word doc or an Excel doc into an actual relational database. So the last opportunity for a student to input anything is we call it the areas of expertise. And this is also highly customized for your institution. If you have challenge exams or you have portfolios or really any alternative form for students to attempt credit that is specific to your institution, you can pick those. Maybe you have 10 courses that students will do via portfolio normally. We would take the program, we would take the course name, and then we would also take the learning outcomes, and we upload them right into the tool so the student can self-identify which learning outcome is like them and which one isn't. And then, you know, on the back end, an advisor is looking at this result saying, wow, I really feel like this student would be a good candidate to do that intro to business portfolio. So, you know, there's not a really great way to figure out if a student would be good at a standardized exam for a course or a portfolio for a course, but one way would be to look at the syllabus, pull those learning outcomes off, and have them read those learning outcomes. Because that's how, when we talk to colleges, that's how they'll do it. Before they put someone in for a portfolio, they'll say, all right, let's look at the syllabus and tell me how you feel about that. So that was every screen. If you would have every screen on, that would be the student experience. I'm going to go ahead and mark that last one complete. So once as a student, once I mark every section complete, a little pop-up comes and says, hey, do you want to send this to your advisor so they can look at it? And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go ahead and send it right to me because I'm my advisor. If a student hasn't, does someone have a question?
Sorry, Kristen, Doreen. On that last section, again, that would be an area that would probably take us a little bit more time to develop out, you know, upload, build out in the system. So can we do this in stages? Like, can we, you know, get this stood up and doing some of the areas that you have here, and then we can work to add more as far as the learning outcomes and identify specific courses that we would like students to consider for a portfolio. So is that something we could do in stages?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So what I've sometimes seen people go live with is, you know, about you, languages, informal learning, work, and life experience. So sometimes I'll just go live with those first 5 pages. And then as you determine what courses should be listed under the areas of expertise, you know, we could turn that page on once they're uploaded. And then once we have the certifications, the certifications, any of those crosswalks take a little bit longer because there is some back and forth between me coming back to you for info and clarifying. So for, these 3 crosswalks, we could just launch them later. When we're ready to go, we turn them on. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Sure. And I want to also caution you about the areas of expertise. I wouldn't put your entire college catalog in there because the student's not going to go through all of it. You know, if there were 20 sections here with 20 courses listed under it, you know, it almost starts to defeat the purpose because the student's like, you know, we've tried our best to explain it to them, but it might just be too much. So if you want to start small, I guess I'm saying start small with the learning outcomes.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. A student at any time could go ahead and send this to their advisor anyway. If they mark each section complete, it will prompt them to do it, but I could still go ahead and email this to my advisor at any time. And so this just records everything that I entered. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to my advisor view. So I forgot to say that this was a test database. This is a test database. So everything you're looking at here is some sort of test that I put in or someone else put in as part of a demonstration. You won't see any live data. So I'm going to switch over to advisor view. So if I was Kristen's advisor, I would have just gotten that notification that said, Kristen completed a profile, please go in and look at it. It has a link to the tool. And so I log in. I actually log in the same place that the student does, the Learning Counts/PLA. Go right there and log in. And I can see that I have one student up here who's assigned to me who's completed the tool, and then I have several in progress. But say I was looking for a student who I don't see them there, but I know that they did the tool. They told me I ran into the hallway. Well, here's everybody. So I can see people who are assigned to other advisors, and I can also see people who aren't assigned to anyone, meaning they didn't pick someone yet. So they might need some help. So I might click through. There might be one person at your organization who, you know, periodically once a week goes in and clicks through and sees students who haven't picked an advisor and goes ahead and assigns an advisor to them. So I'm going to go ahead and look at Kristen's information that she entered. Here's all the information from the kind of those customized questions that we could add, you know, the binary questions. We could add more there. I can see that she's fluent in French, but she's never taken a CLEP test, so that might be something I want to recommend for her. I can see the informal learning. She didn't upload her resume. Her life experience, led fellowship. Okay, so then I see 2 certifications and they already have equivalencies. So that's kind of like a quick win. Like I already know, if I want, I could go look at her degree plan, but if there is a place for LC 150 welding, maybe under electives, you know, she could potentially earn 6 credits just from the certifications she already has. And then I can also see these are some other ways she could earn credit. She's already, she got a 56 on the UXL, she got a 66 on this CLEP test, and then I could see one that she entered on her own that's got no equivalency. So if she had uploaded a transcript, I would probably take that information and send it to whomever helps to facilitate making those crosswalk decisions. And then it looks like, wow, she's pretty familiar with all of the learning outcomes from Business 101. So I think I'm going to say that I think she should take that Business 101 challenge exam. So my next step as an advisor, and it might not happen as fast as I just did it in this demo, but I only have an hour. Go ahead and I click Edit Recommendation. So I want to recommend a PLA method for her. Now, if I didn't want to, I can certainly mark that because that's useful information too. Like Kristen wasn't a good candidate, and I could put a note in here for myself and for anyone else who's going to later look this student up, but the student can't see it. But in this case, I am going to recommend that she take a challenge exam. So these are instructions that will get to her, and I'll explain how that gets to her in a second. So I can give really specific instructions to her so she knows what to do. And then I can just leave a note that says, I can go ahead and add another method. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you should take that CLEP French test. Oops. And then if you do that, you get 3 credits. leave myself a little note. So I could go ahead and keep recommending PLA methods. Something else I can customize here for your institution would be that I'm going to, if you say we don't do challenge exams, I could take that off. Or if you do something else, maybe you have demonstrations that students can do, and you call them, interviews or standard demos. We could put something in there. So I'm all done. I'm going to go ahead and finish. So as an advisor, using this tool for this student, I'm done. I recommended her for credit. It's tracked in the database, and now she moves to my archive. She'll no longer be on my homepage when I log in, which is great because I don't want people sitting on there if I've already done the work to make a recommendation for them. So then what happens to that student? How do they find out about that PLA recommendation? So what we did was we batched a process of all the PLA recommendations they run every night at 9 o'clock, and if an advisor has put in a recommendation for a student, here's the email they got. An advisor at your school has reviewed your PLA and determined that you may be eligible to receive however many credits, because remember I had to type in 3 and 3, so 6 additional credits for your expertise. May be eligible, again, not promising. We're using language that is positive but not promising it to them. And then it also says who their advisor was. Please contact your advisor to enroll or review potential credit. And then when a student clicks view my full PLA report, they are brought back to this tool where they'll log in with the username and password that they created. And then they get to see their report. And then up at the top of the report are those PLA recommendations that the advisor put in. So within 24 hours, the student finds out about the PLA methods recommended to them. And then just one more function I want to show you on the back end for advisors and administrators, anyone who's in the tool. We can also, you can show progress. So you could say in the last 30 days, let's see, last 90 days, 15 students are recommended for PLA. In the last year, 50 students are recommended for PLA. So you can start to see that number grow. Maybe you don't have that number now, so you're starting with 0. But you can see stats there. You could also download all of the report recommendations if you wanted to. If you wanted to see specifically, okay, well, it looks like there were 5 students recommended for portfolios. I want to find out what those portfolios were, and I want to find out which advisors did it. An advisor could do this themselves so that maybe they could do reminders to the students who are recommended for PLA. If you find one advisor who's recommending a lot of different PLA options, you might see what they're doing that is different. So, you can use that information with other advisors. And then, I just want to mention that right now, this is a standalone tool. And it's the kind of tool that it is used really just at that front, the intake or, right after intake. So it's usually not something that a student would come back to like 2 years later, but they could. So colleges talk to us about, well, we want this information to be in our SIS or in our CRM. And so we have an affiliate that's also part of the Strata umbrella, and they do connections with different colleges and different systems. And so we're happy to talk to them about potentially connecting this with an SIS or a CRM. The challenge is that there's usually not these fields in a CRM or an SIS. So when we talk about which, what are we going to actually import, that's when we kind of have some problems, just because there's about 50 different points of data here. So I'm happy to take that discussion offline if you guys have a really good idea of like, oh, I think I could see how this would fit into one of our systems. Like maybe just the PLA recommendation is what you want to take with you to the other system. So maybe just this is useful, and we have a little export button here where I could just export this one student, but I don't know. It's a start. So that's really the demo of the tool. What questions do you have?
If you export that, is that like in CSV format or what format?
Oh yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks just kind of like this other one, except that it's just that one student. So that's just the one student instead of the whole list.
Can you go back to that other page that listed a bunch of people? The
Sure.
other spreadsheet. Okay. Is there any kind of like an ID number associated there? I'm not seeing.
There isn't. The ID isn't included in here. Really the most unique identifier would be that email address.
Okay.
So if initially we talked about, potentially locking it down if you only wanted students with an at, hacc.edu email, then your export will always have that there.
Okay,
or maybe,
thanks.
Sure. Or maybe if you still want to keep it for potential students, you can just have it run, and if it matches the HAC, it matches a student one, it gets sucked into your database, and if not, they're just kicked out because it didn't find an email that matched.
So Kristen, that's something that we couldn't customize on that page. Like, can we ask them their ID?
Well, we can ask them their ID, but
students.
we can ask them their ID. We can make that a required field, but it's not on this export. So I don't have a way to change this export file without doing, what we do is we do annual updates to the tool. So that would be kind of put into the queue of like an annual improvement to the tool. So I can write that down. Hold on, adding ID to export.
And Kristen,
yeah.
Since we're talking, again, IDs and systems, I know that at our last conversation, it was mentioned about the potential, there's like a project coming up in the near future about doing more systems integrations with the PLA Accelerator. I didn't know if anyone wanted to share about that with the group.
Yes, I think, Dawn, are you still on the line? Dawn still there? Dawn might have had to hop off. I think that's what I was mentioning, where we have Dexterra as one of our partners here, like one of our affiliates. So that we're looking for a project. If we find a college who's interested in integrating, Dexterra is someone that we can work with. But we don't have a project scheduled. There's no project like we start on October 1st to do an integration. We were just waiting for a college who was interested in integrating it, and then we start that project. But we don't have one, to my knowledge, on the books.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
So any other questions for Kristen? I know Juanita or Janita, some of you, this was your first time seeing the demo, so I didn't know if you had any questions.
This is Ricole. I have a question about the portfolio. So with the portfolio, if the idea is that the student would submit a portfolio, would that be a part of submitting it through this, or would that be just like a paper portfolio or another electronic, portfolio that they would have to submit it to, either the department chair or faculty to review?
Yeah, so that would be a separate instance. So through this tool, there's no way for a faculty to assess anything through this tool, and there's no place to upload it. It would just be the recommendation that we track.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Oh, you're welcome. I want to show you just one other tool that's sometimes colleges will decide that we're going to save the PLA Accelerator for students who are admitted instead of, prospective students. And instead, we're going to put prospective students through this shorter tool. Kind of looks the same. We're looking at it right now. This is called the Credit Predictor. And it captures some basic info about the student, but not very much. And it doesn't have a database attached to it. It just generates a lead email, and the lead email goes to whomever you decide at your institution can get leads. So this might just be something that you put on your PLA page, on your PLA web page. So it just starts to, let's see, does that work? Have I been working for more than 5 years? You know, trying to figure out, are you an adult? Would you rather write a paper than take a course? So then I put in some basic info here, and I can also ask one question. So if there's just one thing you'd like to know about these prospective students showing up, you could ask what location they're interested in, what subject they're interested in, or are you current or prospective? But this is really all the information we got from them, nothing else, no other private information. I'm gonna, hold on, I gotta pick a person, and I gotta pick a location, there we go. So it asks me, how long have I been working? You know, so it's going to start to ask me really general questions. It's asking me if I have licenses, but unlike the accelerator, this doesn't let me tell you the name of my license or upload my transcript for it. So this is our true lead generator tool. So after I'm done with all this, it shows them some really basic details. So here is where the computer has made all of the decisions. And we know that computers are not going to be granting PLA credit for students. So it's making some basic calculations. This is based on if you give me your low end of a credit hour and high end of a credit hour and how long your term is. That it makes a little calculation right there. And then it says, oh, you might want to take an exam. You might want to get your transcript from an ACE evaluated course. You might have taken an AP test. So it makes some basic recommendations, and then an email is sent to whoever you want at your school, and it says, here's a student who did the credit predictor. It might be a brand new student, you should respond. So it's some really basic info. If you're thinking about having the accelerator be for only existing students and the credit predictor be for prospective students.
Excellent. I love that. It's a great tool.
Awesome.
This is Krista. I have a quick question. So obviously, I appreciate you showing us the tool, but what's required beforehand? So like, can you just give us a quick idea of the amount of work that goes into building this? What's the amount of time it takes? You know, is it a 3 to 6 month rollout for us to build all of these pieces in, and what amount of hours or work is required on our part to get all the structural pieces in place? Oh,
Krista, that's a really good question. So when we start with the PLA Accelerator, I will give you, hold on, I meant to go in as a student, and I messed that up. Give me one student, give me 1 sec. We give you a document to fill out. It's a Word document. It's about 3 pages long, and it's called the organizer. And so we'll ask questions. It's like, how much is a credit hour? You know, some of those basic questions that then get put into the credit predictor, so we could build the credit predictor tool. And then we will use that to build the accelerator. So once the accelerator is built, I will, so what's that time frame? Usually it takes colleges about a week to complete the organizer document. It takes about a week to get the accelerator built, just the shell of it. And then I sit and have a screen share with whoever my contact is, where we literally go page by page, and on the fly, I make the edits. I have 2 computers going, and I customize each screen as much as I can to have the configuration, you know, the language, the question, everything. So I could get you up and running on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these first 5 sections, probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. Because it's 1 week for the organizer, 1 week to build the tool, and then 1 week where we have someone in our group, her name's Katrina, she'll do the advisor training. So she could do that in the 3rd week, where she shows the advisors what the front end and the back of the tool looks like. So we could get you up and running in 3 to 4 weeks just on those first 5 sections. And then when we start to work on certifications, exams, military, and areas of expertise, those will get a little bit more complicated. You know, it might, it might take me a whole week to enter certifications if you have, 100 of them. So it really just depends on how much data you have and then how well organized it is. But other than compiling it in a format that would make sense, in a soft copy format that would make sense for me, you don't have an extreme heavy load. Like I would say the heaviest lift is if you're going to have a lot of these courses and a lot of learning outcomes, that, that might take a while because you probably don't have those in an Excel spreadsheet, and I need them in a very specific format. So you might have to do some copying and pasting. So this might take you or some support staff some time. But we usually get people up within a month. If it takes longer for them to get all the questions on the organizer, maybe 6 weeks. But it can be pretty rapid because, the blessing and the curse of this tool is that it can be configured, but not extremely configured. Like I can't reprogram it or build a whole new page. I can only do whatever I can with these pages.
Okay, and that's working under the assumption that we know that if I have X certification, it's directly tied to these 5 courses, right? Like all of that work has to be built prior to any of this other stuff happening.
Oh, yes. If you, that's why we wouldn't turn the certifications on until you guys have that work done. Have you done that before, where you mapped outside, certifications to courses?
Shannon, do you want to talk about that?
Hi, everyone. So,
Hi.
yeah, I mean, right now we have a spreadsheet of certifications that I've received back from the department that I pretty much use. If students send those in, I go to my spreadsheet and I determine what's transferring. So those are some of the common ones for like CDA for education, and also some of the IT certifications, like the C+ certifications that we get in. I can go right to my spreadsheet and determine what class they should be getting credit for. If it's a newer certification or something I don't have on my spreadsheet, then that gets sent to the department and they review it. And then if it's accepted, then it comes back to me, and then I add that to my spreadsheet for future reference. So it sounds like it's something similar to this that we would be doing.
Right. As soon as if you have that list, perhaps we can start with your spreadsheet as the input. Because if you think about what the fields are, this is a different account. So I would need the name of the certificate. What people would type it in. So usually the company or the organization it's from, the equivalency, the number of credits, especially if it's going to be an exam, we like to show there's a little table that says like, you get 3 credits for this course, 4 credits for that course. So yeah, we could probably start with your spreadsheet, and then when you could contact me and say, oh, we have a new one that was approved, and I could go ahead and add it in.
Yeah, that would be helpful to us to have that there. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now already with the spreadsheets and going back and forth between the departments, and then anytime we add a new one, it would just get added to this tool, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes, that would be great. And also, here's a listing view. I switched over to one of my live clients, Wilmington, or they're about to go live, and they have they have a good deal of crosswalks. They have about 200 crosswalks here, and like you can see here, it's got all of these details. So this might be something for you, Shannon. In addition to your spreadsheet, you could also go look there to be like, oh, did I already give her that one? Because this would be out there for everyone to look at. Students wouldn't necessarily see this view, but I mean, they certainly could go look if you link to it. But we could have some really, pretty specific details on there, and then you could see all of your crosswalks.
Okay, thank you.
And one more question. Within our contract, if we were to work with your group, how often can we modify the data that we have within the system before additional costs are incurred? Is it like unlimited access to update, change, delete, add, etc., or there's certain amounts of context?
You know, right now we don't have a limit on it. It's something that we've considered to say, you know, if people are going to have like 500 certificates to upload, that might take a certain amount of time. But right now, the pricing that we shared with you, we do not have any stipulations. You know, we can meet, I would say we could meet quarterly, and you could say, you know, I don't like this part of the page, can you change this wording? You know, if you just have like text changes, if you want to give me new courses to put into the areas of expertise, you could send me that once a quarter. You'd be like, here are the 10 new courses we're adding for portfolio. And then if you have new crosswalks, I would say you could just send me those crosswalks whenever you get them. So yeah, at this time, there's no limit on the data, and there's also no limit on the amount of students or the amount of advisors.
Great questions, everyone.
Definitely.
So we just have a few minutes. Any additional questions for Kristen?
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.